So are we live? Yes, we are. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Meet the HR only here on Pro Talks, an initiative by Unacademy. And this is episode 2. Before I get into the episode, I just want to ensure that all of us are staying at home and are safe. And just want to take this opportunity to also wish all the wonderful fathers out there in the world a very happy Father's Day to all of you. Right. So, getting into the episode today, we have with us someone who is richly experienced in the field of HR, having over 30 years of experience. His name is Mr. Srikanth, and he's here with us. He's currently working with Siemens Technology and Services India as a director of HR. And let's get into a conversation with him and understand a little bit about his journey. And he's here to share also a bit of advice for all of you who want to become HRs for the future, talk about some general trends in HR today, and so much more. And most importantly, also how you can go about preparing for roles in tech. So let's get into a conversation with Mr. Srikanth. Hello, Mr. Srikanth.
Hello, Rishabh.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing pretty good. Glad to be here. I echo your thoughts. A very good Father's Day to everyone out there. And of course, I hope all of you are staying safe, getting vaccinated, and preparing for the new world as it unfolds.
Right, sir. So, sir, my first question to you is: you must be seated on the other side of the table quite often, wherein you're seen asking questions to a lot of candidates. How does it feel to be on the other side of the table today, where I'm interviewing you for a change?
Yeah, and it's a kind of a strange feeling, but we do have a lot of these interactions even within our organization, where we put ourselves in the hot seat and get to answer people. We have what we call Ask Me Anything sessions. So it's a kind of, I'm now doing it for a wider audience outside my organization. So not so unreal after all.
Right. So, sir, like I mentioned during my introduction, that it's been a really long and rich career for you so far, more than 30 years in the field of HR. How do you look back on this journey of yours?
You know, Rishabh, a lot of this, I start off life in the IT, not in the IT industry, but in the hotel industry. I was with the Taj Group of Hotels and worked in the operations training for quite 7 months before I moved into HR. And so I've done every role in my first job in the hotel, starting from butchery to the kitchen to cleaning toilets, which taught me dignity of labor, right? And to value every role because you then know every role is important for the organization. And I carried that lesson across when I moved into the IT industry. I worked with startups with 30 people. I work for organizations which are very, very large MNCs. And the one thing that really runs across all of that is treat people fairly, treat people with respect, because every role that they do, however big or small that role is, aids in the organization. It's part of an overall design. So I think empathy for people has been something which has run through the core. The other aspect about my career, Rishabh, has been that I have not stuck only from a HR point of view to a HR role. I've done all kinds of roles in the journey that I've had. I've done consulting, I've done project management, I've done sales, I've done sales planning, I've met clients, I've met end clients, I've negotiated. So I've done a variety of jobs within the 27 odd years that I've had been in the IT industry.
Right, that's wonderful to know, sir. And if I were to ask you, sir, what would be the main reason why someone should get into the field of human resources today? What would your answer to them be?
Number one, for me, it's about people, right? And normally, it's a kind of a cliche when you say I'm interested in people and being genuinely interested in people. HR gives you a huge amount. I mean, there are the dark sides to it, of course, right? HR gives you a huge amount of, emotions of people, and you need to deal with that. You need to deal with issues which happen because for each person, the issues are different, and then figure out how you're going to manage that in terms of orientation. Let me give you an example. A few days back, we had an employee around 10:30 at night who had to rush to hospital because his wife had a premature delivery. And the kid was born 2 months early. They needed a ventilator, which was not available in that hospital. So they had to move the person to a different hospital. So at 10:45 at night, this person called saying that, will the company pay for me? Is my insurance cover when my kid is in a different hospital, right? So my answer was, don't worry about the money right now. Go there, get to the other hospital, because that is more important. Money, we will take care of it, all right? So whether your policies accept that or not, you don't know. But at that point in time, you can't go and look at policy. So if the policy didn't accept it, we would have just paid the money directly to the person, because that was what was more important. So from a HR point of view, you need to be able to look at not conformance, but you need to genuinely have this need for wanting to help people, help their careers. And then HR is a great place for you. It gives you a huge amount of interaction, good and bad. Of course, there are downsides to it. You feel terrible when you have to ask people to leave, not for any fault of theirs, but when an organization goes through a meltdown. We have had, a lot of things in the past. We had the crash of 2010. Even now, in the last 1 to 2 years with COVID, a lot of small and medium industries are facing a huge amount of challenge, right? So that comes with the territory. But then how do you do it in a way that you still are humane about it is actually important. So you need to genuinely want to love working with people.
Right, absolutely. At the end of the day, HR is all about people and understanding their needs, right?
Right.
So, sir, like you just mentioned, one of the things that's really engulfed the world at the moment is the pandemic. So I wanted to know from you that what's the kind of impact that it has had on the industry and specifically your company? Could you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah. On the industry, there are very broad trends that are happening at this point in time. IT is extremely hot right now. The market is extremely good. A huge amount of recruitment happening in the IT market. And there are multiple reasons for that, but the COVID has actually accelerated this. A lot of times clients have been talking about outsourcing. Many of them have outsourced, but at the end of it, they outsourced what they thought could be done remotely, not the entire core of the jobs, right? And what COVID has done, it's breaking down that thinking that or limitations that people had or organizations had. People have now started realizing in the West that if a job, because everybody was working from home, everybody was working remote, whether you're working remote 100 kilometers away or 5,000 miles away did not really matter, because work was getting done remote. Now, with that realization, a lot more jobs are flowing into India. Because they have realized that you can outsource more work than what was previously thought possible. Yeah. So in that sense, the IT industry has picked up heat, a huge amount of outsourcing happening, and more importantly, the nature of the jobs that are getting outsourced are also increasing, in complexity. Now, architect roles are getting outsourced. Product management roles are getting outsourced. Product ownership is being transferred. So in that sense, a lot more value-added jobs are getting moved out, and not just the jobs that people thought could be done remotely. So in that sense, there is a huge amount of uptick in the IT industry in India.
So you're saying COVID has actually accelerated the process?
Has actually accelerated the process. Yeah. That's right.
Right. And you also just interestingly mentioned that, about remote working. So I wanted to know your thought on this. What do you think? Has remote working kind of increased productivity of employees, or it has decreased? What do you say from an HR's point of view, from your lens?
There are two aspects that have happened. On the positive side, I don't think remote working has brought down productivity. Actually, it has increased productivity. People are working more, and we have not seen a downtick on productivity at all. Productivity has been good. There are certain roles that cannot be done remotely. For example, when you need a lab, when you need to integrate software with hardware, and you can't take all pieces of hardware home. So there are certain roles that needs to be done only within the organization. There are certain aspects when it comes to design, right? We can use technology like concept boards. We can have team calls and then debate this. But certain of those roles happen much better when you are sitting in office across a table and ideating. So there are certain aspects where there has been a bit of a downside, where productivity is happening, but not to the extent that. But regular jobs, productivity at home has not been impacted at all. So that's a good thing.
That's a good sign. Yeah.
However, we will have to realize India is not the US, where in the US you can have complete true work from home for a continuous basis. Some of the roles in India we cannot, essentially also because our labor laws do not allow for that. As of now, we are doing it because the government has relaxed certain rules in the ITES industry, where you are allowed to work remote. For example, the laptop that I'm using, right, is a bonded, which means I cannot take it out of my office space. Right now, it's a relaxation, so I can take it out. Hardware can be taken out because there's a relaxation. So unless the government rule changes, that's going to be a challenge. The second aspect of that is we do not have offices everywhere in the country. Today, we have people operating at different places. I mean, it's not just true of my company, of every other company. People have gone back to their hometowns, right? But there are legal aspects about working where you require commercial licenses to operate, right? So at the end of the pandemic, most people will be called back to their offices and work out of their designated workplaces, because India is truly not a work from anywhere from a legal perspective yet. We will have to see if the government changes some of these rules. NASSCOM has, of course, asked the government for some relaxations, but as it stands today, people will have to get back to their workplaces unless the organization has offices everywhere and they can adjust people in all the cities.
Right, absolutely. And so there are a lot of people who are currently working at home who are a little demotivated, and their morale has suffered because of being at home and not being able to step out and enjoy the normal way of life. And sometimes even personal and professional boundaries get crossed. So what do you think as organizations and HR teams specifically should do in order to keep the morale up? And if your organization has taken any steps like that, could you tell us a little bit about that?
I can do that. Thanks, Rishabh. See, mental fatigue and resilience, these are aspects where most organizations, including mine, have been working with people. We have wellness sessions. We have a lot of people, unfortunately, who have lost their lives because of COVID. We have employees who have expired. We have the family members who have expired. So one of the things that organizations are doing and we have done is offer grief counseling to our employees because they've lost their, one of their colleagues. So we've tied up with mental health organizations to provide, sessions on mental health and help people. We have offered additional 10 days of wellness leave in our organization, where we are asking people to take 10 days off at this point in time, at any time they require. We've offered COVID-related, facilities, work from home allowances and stuff like that. So we are easing things for people when they are working. We also have certain aspects like not having calls on certain days so that people can balance their days better. So we have decided that beyond a particular time, we will not call people or have meetings. So there are various steps which we have taken, and most organizations in the IT industry have taken these steps to ensure that we are able to work with the people. The more important thing is to provide a safe space for them to call up and talk to us. and say that they have a challenge, right? Most people feel that, in this, some of these, when you have these feelings of depression, the Indian society normally says that, okay, sleep over it, it will go away, right? But we are telling people these are telltale signs. If you are able not to open your laptop in the morning, right? You feel fatigued, you don't want to do that, right? Give us a call, talk to us, and we will help you. So it is, the good part of this has been that people have discovered resilience, right? Everyone has stretched the boundaries which they never thought was possible. So people have discovered resilience, but there is also a huge amount of fatigue. And we are trying to ease that up as much as possible. Hopefully, once the vaccination picks up space, people will start to get back to work. Siemens has announced a global policy where the decision where to work, whether at home or office, is left up to the employee, not to the manager. So if you're more productive working from home, you can decide to work from home. But if your productivity includes working on hardware, which is only there in the office, then obviously you have to make that call to get to office, but you don't have to do it on a daily basis. Do it when you need to get to office. I think giving that power back to an employee has put a lot of, taken the pressure off. So it is the employee who decides where they want to work from, not the manager. And I think that is a very positive step in terms of trust and in terms of, the ability of the employee to make the decision. So it's not that we are forcing anybody to come back, but I think some of these steps are what we are doing as Siemens to help our employees.
That's wonderful to know, sir, the steps that y'all are taking, and it's great that y'all care so much for the welfare of your employees. Right. So, sir, these were some questions that I had for you for the initial set. There is, at Unacademy as an organization, we're always listening to our student community and some of the questions that they have. So, preceding this interview, we had actually put up a set of questions on some of our YouTube channels regarding, what are some of the common questions that you would want an HR to answer for you. So, we have curated a list of about 4 to 5 questions, which I really want you to answer for us. Sure. So, I'm just going to ask you those questions now, all right? Yeah. Right, sir. So the first question that has come from someone is that these are basically general topics and nothing to do with tech. We will get into tech a little later. Sure. But with respect to generic HR, what does a great resume look like in your opinion? And what all should it definitely contain? And what should one avoid putting in it? And this is with respect to all roles that are there, be it the junior level, mid-level, or senior level.
Okay. Couple of advice on this particular thing. It's a very broad question. See, when we look at a resume, if you look at it from an organization point of view, it goes through about 2 or 3 hands. All right. A lot of organizations also use technology nowadays to parse through the various resumes that are available in the market. Whether it is on LinkedIn or a PDF format, you pass through to capture the keywords and then decide the fit in terms of the role on the job description, right? So in a sense, a lot of people use a lot of graphics on the resume, right? The graphics look good when it's printed, but when you are using a machine to parse through, when you're using technology, the graphics don't really count for much, right? So in the sense, I would say you minimize the use of graphics. Sometimes it looks good, you keep it, but don't overdo that. I think that would be my first advice. The second one is what do organizations need to look at, right? Especially when it comes to technology, we're looking at skills, right? So what skills that you have is pretty important to know. A lot of times people put the skills and put a scale on the skills, saying that I know this 4 on 5. That's your own self-estimation. That doesn't really count for much. Don't use so much space because we are not going to rely on your judgment of yourself. We will judge that in the interviews. So the skills are important. So that's pretty. The other aspect that I would say is when you're talking in the context of the resume, the content that you have, right? A lot of people only put the projects that they are working on. right? So what ends up is most resumes end up as a description of the project, not a description of what you personally have done on the project, right? So keep the project description to a short limit and then say, this was the project, my role in this was, and what did I do? What did I achieve? I think that is important because that tells me who you are, what your skills are, rather than what project you have worked on.
Yeah.
That's important, but what is more important is what you have done, right? So the content needs to be very clearly about what you have achieved. What are the results that you have achieved? So your knowledge, your competencies, and what you have achieved, if that comes through in the resume, I think a lot of work is done. The other aspect which you need to do is, if your resume runs to more than one page, if it's 2 or 3 pages, please ensure that as a header or footer, your name is there in the resume. A lot of times papers get lost if I'm landing up at the second page. I do not know whose resume it is because there is no linkage to which name it is. So please use your name on all pages of the resume so that even if 1 or 2 pages get unhinged in the process in the organization, we get to know who it is. So that is pretty important. And the contact information, right, is pretty important. A lot of times people put the name of their father, a large amount of, of their address, where they are from, etc. In today's world, in an IT world, it's not necessary because we're going to call you up on your phone number or write to you on your email. So remove all extraneous things, because if you have 2 pages that you want to condense your life into on a resume, make it count. So remove the frivolous information, put only things that are absolutely required, and put content in terms of which tells me what you are, what you have done, and what results you have achieved. I think that is my broad advice.
Yeah, ultimately, to summarize, I would just say that your knowledge, skills, and competencies should show clearly on your resume, and it should not contain any kind of unnecessary information, right?
Yeah.
Right. So I hope whoever asked this question, you have got this answered for yourself. Thank you. The next question, sir, for you is, this one is pertaining to feedback, I believe, that if I get selected for a role, what is the reason? And if I don't get selected, what is the reason?
Okay. See, I'm sure when you're writing, you see the job description that people have, right? When it comes to why do people get selected for that role? It's because of 3 reasons. One, you have technically competent. You have proved that in your resume and your interview. Number 2, you have worked on similar skills or you worked on similar domains. Because what organizations look at, somebody who can join and be productive in a very short period of time. So if people have worked on the same domain or a similar domain, if people have worked on similar skills, then it becomes more easier for organizations to pick them up for the role. And third, you are the timing of your availability. Okay, that also matters in terms of people picking you up. So you are a match for the role, right? The reason why people may not get selected for the role is somebody else is a higher match than they are. So a lot of times organizations don't reject a person, right? They reject you for a role and they keep the resume in the database for the next 6 months because if there is any other role that comes up, they will again come back to you saying that, your skill set still fit us. So organizations put the criteria saying fit for the role that we are selecting, fit for the organization because the person has the skills. But today, if I have only one vacancy, there are 2 good people, I will select the one who is number 1 in my list, but the number 2 is not a reject. The number 2, we are just waiting for another opportunity where we can use the skill. Number 3 is where we feel that the person's aptitude, skill set does not really fit in with the organization, right? So that's a reject. So, but the second category, we will still have on a database for the next 6 months and get back to the person. So a reject is not always a reject. It's always in context of a job, right? It's not that we are rejecting a person.
Right, absolutely. Ultimately, it's about the context and not just this, right? So thank you, sir, for sharing that. Yeah. The next question for you, sir, is what is the best answer to the question, why should we hire you?
Okay. See, a lot of these questions, why should we hire you, right, is not about the technical skills, because if not, you would not be there in the interview in the first place, right? So when we talk about why should we hire you, you need to talk about your soft skills, right? Your ability to learn things very fast, right? Your commitment to the role that you are getting, what your aspirations are and how that fits in with the organization. So when you're attending an interview with a company, just don't go in blindly, study the company, right? So for example, if you were to look at the company's website and then look at the thrust areas for the organization, right? And then say, why should you should hire me is because I have these skill sets, I have an inclination towards this area, and your organization is working on that, and I find that our interests are coinciding, right? So you talk about and go into specifics. Talk about you are into you're looking at a hydrogen powered plane, right, which is clean energy, and I'm interested in that because in my past I have done these four things, which talks about why I'm interested in clean energy. So correlate an organizational direction with your own, and that is the answer. Because at that point, don't say, I know C++, therefore you need to hire me. That's not the answer there. So that question is about soft skills.
Right, absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you, sir, for that answer. The last question, sir, in this list is, there are some interviews that end in 10 minutes, whereas some that end after 45 minutes. What could be the reason for this? Does this mean that the candidate hasn't got the job, or was he really that good that the interview did not need to be that long?
It could be a variety of reasons. I'll give you the positive ones first and then the other ones later. When an interview lasts for only 10 minutes, right, it means that the interviewee has made an impression either way within the first 10 minutes. A lot of times what happens is you look at the candidate, you already know the person is really good. You are doing the interview just to confirm what you've already decided. And that can happen within the first 10 minutes. So it can be either for a good reason, or you look at that and say, this does not fit the role that I have, right? It's a wrong call that people below have made, right? And then you don't want to carry on with that. So most of the times, that is the only reason why it will end up in a short time. When it ends up in a longer time, when you say 45 minutes, when it goes on, it's because you are able to hold the interest, and the interviewer is trying to get more and more detail to confirm the decision, right? That whether the person is suitable or not, or the person is looking at other roles that they might have and then saying that not for this role, but is there some other role where I can fit the person in because this person is really good, has shown learning, has shown initiative, has shown character. So it could be for a variety of reasons why an interview can go, short to long. There are times where you come out of the interview saying that, I did not answer any questions to their satisfaction. Their body language was bad. I'm not getting the job, but you end up getting it. There are times you feel that you've cracked every question, that you've done great, and you don't get the job, right? So I don't think you can really put a finger on why something lasts longer. When it lasts longer, it is because they are trying to confirm by getting more and more deeper into questions, right? But a very long interview also gives you a long time for people to do missteps, say something and contradict that over a period of time. So in that sense, yes, a longer thing means that you need to be very, very consistent. There are top management jobs where the interview goes on for 2 days, right? And you're meeting a variety of people. And if you're not consistent in what you're saying, right, then it becomes a challenge. So one, be extremely truthful. If you don't know is a great answer. Don't know, but I'm willing to learn is a greater answer, right? Or if you can give an answer saying that I was put on this particular project where I did not know the technology. I picked it up within 3 weeks, and I was able to deliver. Also tells me that when it's not the question of your attitude, your focus towards learning is important, right? It's not that I know something or I don't know something. Today, people have a variety of resources to even find answers which they don't know. Google and Wikipedia has democratized some amount of learning, right? So in that sense, if you know where to go to, that's still good, but your attitude there is what is important.
Right. So just to summarize, it really depends on the kind of candidate there is, on the
That's
basis
right.
of the time that it takes for the interview. Right. So I hope your question has been answered, whoever has asked this question. So, sir, those were a little bit of the generic HR topics and questions that we had here for you. Now let's get into some of the tech part of which you have specialized in for most of your career. So my first question to you in this, sir, is that how does one really prepare for a role in tech?
Okay. See, there are technology keeps changing all the time, right? It goes by Moore's law. Technology changes are faster than you think. So a lot of times people have to learn, relearn, unlearn, and relearn quite a bit of things, right? So if you're looking at a role in tech, you need to be on top of what is the tech trends at this point in time. That's one, right? If you were to talk about at this point in time, in 2021, I would say there are things like, for example, cybersecurity. This has been important and it's going to be more important in the future. With a lot more, with 5G coming in, a lot more interconnected devices, cybersecurity is going to be a very, very hot area. Big data is another very, very hot area at this point in time. And interoperable devices. So IoT and IIoT are pretty important. Then if you look at it, AI, ML is another one, cloud or full stack development. These are the 5 top technology trends which are currently ruling. So if people are looking at a career, if they are able to learn about these technologies, concentrate on these and learn something about, but each of these are skill sets that you can pick up that would really help. The most important thing, these technologies will come and go because AI, ML will fade and there'll be something else that comes in, right? My advice for people who want to get into tech, two things. One, knowing where to concentrate on. So today it is AI, ML, or cybersecurity, right? So that's important. Second thing is, don't just find out what it does, find out how something operates, right? Go deeper, scratch deeper than the surface, and then learn why it is happening, the how of it, the why of it, right? If you know that, if you can get deeper into it, right, you will always be in a position to, answer questions much better because you are looking at the implication of something, right? For example, this is something that as a tech question that we have been asking people for the past 15, 20 years, right? I'm going to ask a very simple question and talk about it. One of the simple coding exercise that we give even to students at campus is take an array of n elements, rotate it k times, right? And write a code for that, right? 98% of the people write a recursive code, shift the element around once, the array around once, check if it exits, right? Doesn't, recursive program to go round and round till it exits, right? But the more brilliant ones, because they know how the system operates, right? They take the first element, move it to the kth position and rotate the array around once, right? You can write the software for that. Begin with the end in mind, right? Which is the most elegant way to write software, right? You can do this when you know how the system operates and how the system works. So don't just remain on the surface, go deeper, learn the why of it, learn how your code operates, right? If you know how your code operates and you get deeper, that's where you make yourself valuable in the tech industry, which means you have the ability to shift and move into the next technology because you're not just interested in learning the technology at the surface, you're actually learning how it operates.
Right. At the end of the day, you really need to be curious and dive deep into whatever you're kind of
Dive deep into
doing.
whatever, absolutely.
Yeah. So, sir, you had mentioned that today the interviews that you'll conduct, it is not just about coding. There is a lot more to it. So, what do you think candidates need to do a little extra apart from just having coding knowledge?
Okay. Uh, One, if depending on the industry that you're going into, look at the job description. What are they hiring you for? Which division they are hiring you for? And learn a little bit about the domain. Which are the kind of domains that they work in? All right. So it can be BFSI. So learn about the banking sector, learn about insurance sector. What is the more critical one among that? So domain knowledge is pretty important. So not just coding, but domain, right? So a bit of domain is always going to help. The second aspect is your focus on learning, right? What have you learned in the last couple of 6 months, right? That is also pretty important. And how are you? What have you learned? How are you learning it, right? Oh, my organization did not provide me training is not an answer. You can go to Udemy, you can go to LinkedIn Learning. There are a lot of free courses everywhere that you can actually go and learn things on. So if you're able to showcase that you have a learning mind, that you are curious and you're learning, that goes a long way in terms of saying that you are a kind of person that an organization would like to keep on because you are interested, right? The third one is problem solving, right? How have you solved problems? The fourth one is resilience, which is I have made this mistake, I've learned from it, I've moved on. That's pretty important. Most people, when you ask them about, tell me what your weakness are, they always talk about a strength cloaked as a weakness, right? Oh, I am so detail oriented that sometimes, I mean, don't get into that because these are when the people sitting on this side of the table have met 10,000 more people like you, right? So you're not the first one who's going to say something like that, right? Make it genuine in terms of saying that I did this, it was a mistake, this happened, and what I learned from it and how I recovered from it, right? Instead of saying a broad statement, get into detail, and if you can talk about that, that tells me that you have learned something. Obviously, all of us make mistakes. All of us make mistakes at work. We learn from it and we correct it and we move on. But the question is the ability to accept that and show me the soft skills that are required in terms of resilience. Always have an example that you talk about. I think that is the most easiest way where you can prove that you're not just a coder. The other aspect is also talk about technology. If you're very interested in coding, talk about other things that you're doing in that area. For example, are you a part of the open software initiative? Are you going there and you are a tester of software there, right? Which tells me that you're really interested in software beyond the work that the organization is giving you, right? So you need to be able to prove something beyond that. Or you are dabbling in apps and you can say that I have done this or I've solutioned this, right? That is pretty important.
Right, absolutely. Thank you, sir, for sharing that. So, we were discussing just before the show about something called robot process automation, something that's, coming into the industry right now, RPAs. And it was in the news a couple of days back that, now that they're coming in, it could lead to a slash of a lot of jobs. And considering India, as a market, software firms employ nearly 16 million people. And now they're saying that this figure could be cut by 3 million by 2022. That could mean a potential loss of a lot of employees. And what do you have to say about this?
Okay. See, the process automation has always been there. It's gaining more, I think, prominence at this point in time because people are realizing that you can do certain things using AI and ML, and those are really changing the face of some of the industries, right? Now, for that, I would say go on Google a thing called 25 human skills that are not going to be replaced by machines. There was a University of Oxford, they've done a study. and they have put in a list of 25 skills which machines can never replicate, right? So be able to work on any of those areas, 25 areas, and pick up skills in those, because those jobs are never going to go to a robotic process. That's number one. Number two, learn skills like AI ML, which manufactures these robotic processes. So that way you're still employable with the skill in terms of being in the trend of technology and create those softwares, right? So that's another aspect. The third thing people need to do is to have this ability of learning continuously, because things are going to change every year, trends are changing. So be able to learn about newer technologies so that you are employable in the next world.
Upskilling.
What it also means is don't wait for your organization to give you those skills. All right. There are a lot of places where there are resources out there. So spend your own time and energy learning skills which are in the need for tomorrow. These are the broad advices that I'm going to give. You can't wish away these changes in technology. These technology changes are going to come. Most organizations may not retrench as many of these people because many of them will be reskilled and used in other roles, right? It's not going to lead to a complete loss of jobs, but for the roles will be available for people who have the willingness to learn, the ability to learn, and showing that they can, get on top of this.
Right. Ultimately, people need to learn, unlearn, reskill, and upskill. That is what is important.
Absolutely.
Right. So, sir, coming to my next question for you, like just following up to my previous question, we just mentioned about RPAs and that the fact that they'll be coming. Apart from that, we know that, if I may call it, something like a tech explosion that has been happening. Technology is just getting better and better every day, and things around us are changing by the minute. At the end of the day, it's creating a lot of opportunities in the job market. But a lot of people are not skilled enough to take up these jobs. So how do you kind of bridge that gap?
Okay. So, see, this is one of the paradoxes that we have, that we do have a huge number of people and people who are working in the tech industry. A lot of people coming out from engineering colleges. But if you take every major IT company, they take these people who come out of the engineering colleges, but they go through their own training to get them productive, right? So there is a gap between the skill level of people that they have and the skill level that is desirable from an organization point of view, right? So most companies provide learning campuses within their organizations, ability for people to learn new technologies, new skills, etc. And there are a lot of places, and your organization included, which are helping to bridge the gap between the knowledge that people have and the knowledge that the industry requires, right? But ultimately, it is left up to people's initiative to be able to figure out where they can get this knowledge from and skill themselves up. Do not always wait for your organization to skill you up. That's one. The second aspect of that is most people have knowledge in terms of what to do. But as I mentioned, a lot more roles are coming into India now where we are just not given a blueprint and an architecture and told just to code, right? We have to create things ourselves, right? A lot of design thinking is happening, a lot of solutioning thinking is happening. So in that sense, we require a lot more different skills in terms of the ability to, not just implement something that's been given to you, but to solution it, to work, to iterate with the client and create the end result. So in that sense, the skills that are required are not just coding, but thinking skills, looking at things in a different way, the ability to ideate. So these are skills that people need to pick up along with coding. So only coding, technical knowledge is not going to work anymore. When we talk about full stack developers, you need to do the entire aspect, right from the starting point of architecting it to testing it so that you are doing the whole range of jobs. So those are the new skill sets that are required for the future. And as tech employees, we need to, ride this wave to look at where we need to go to. One website that I've always found useful in this is Stack Overflow. Because when you go to Stack Overflow, you see technology, you see trends in the technology, you also see what is adjacent skill to that technology. So how do you actually pick something up? I think when people start to take their deeper interest in terms of their own learning, we would be able to bridge this gap.
Right, absolutely. And ultimately, it's about, being a well-rounded professional, having a 360-degree approach to everything, and not just being someone who's really good at technical skills, but having an overall perspective of what is happening in the industry.
That's right.
Right, sir. So, sir, talking about my next question for you, there is always this debate between what is better to join at the start of your career or even a little later in your career, which is either a startup or a well-established company. So, being someone from a tech background, what do you think is the ideal solution? Should one join a startup or a well-established company?
Okay. A very, very difficult question to answer. Because I have been a part of startups, I've been part of large organizations, right? I've seen both. See, startups give you a tremendous ability to learn, right? And today, most startups also are very well funded.
Yeah.
So they are able to, offer fabulous salaries and options. And you need to have the mindset to work in a startup, because what happens in a startup is there are no boundaries, and because it's a startup, there are no defined roles either.
Yeah.
You end up doing a lot of everything, right? So you need to have the mindset to be able to do that. You can't say that is not my job, or I will not do that. I mean, if it means mopping the floor, you better get around to it, because there's nobody else who will do that for you. You need to go and post something yourself, because there's no admin department to post your courier, right? You need to do everything in a startup. You need to have that kind of a mindset to do that. So it is tremendous learning. However, the learning is not very structured, right? You learn because that is what the organization needs at that point in time, right? So it depends again on the technology, a huge amount of learning, but there is a huge risk associated with that. 80% plus of startups fail, right? And they go on to do different things. So if you have the ability to learn from that, right, and move on, great. Don't expect that, the first startup that you join, you go to the Bahamas and retire with a ton of money, right? And it's extremely hard work. There'll be no working hours. One of the startups that I worked in, for about 4 months, I didn't get my compensation or my salary because the company did not have the money to pay me, right? But I still ended up working 18 hours out there because the work was very exciting. So you need to have that kind of a mindset. On the other hand, a larger organization gives you a very structured approach. They have lots of benefits in place. The compensation could be higher or lower depending on the organization that you're joining. But you will have a very structured approach to learning and a structured approach to career, right? And again, it's a safer option because these large organizations are not going to close down very fast. But again, it depends upon your bent of mind, Rishabh. It's not. Some startups are very well suited to some people, right, and not suited to others, because if they want a more regimented life, right, you need to work in a larger organization. There is also another aspect of economic requirement. If you have a large EMI to pay, right, a lot of people won't take a risk of joining a startup at that point in time. I think it's all very, very individual. But broadly, in a startup, there's no structured learning, but there's a huge amount of learning. You need to have the mindset. You need to be able to work on a variety of things. You learn a lot out there, right? And so, if you're somebody who can concentrate on the learning aspect of it, living up that kind of an experience, great. A startup is a great place. You want something more structured, depends on who you are.
Right. So at the end of the day, sir, I would say it's subjective, right? Someone would like to join a startup versus someone would like to join a well-established organization, but the learning ultimately is equal at both the places.
It's absolutely
Right.
absolutely. One is structured, one is non-structured, but at the end of the day, you will learn a lot in both those pieces. Yes.
Yeah, or maybe you can even work at a startup for some defined period and then even move to a larger organization and vice versa.
Absolutely. And today is a gig economy where you have the ability to work sometimes as a gig worker, you can work for both a large organization and a startup at the same time.
Right.
Those kind of careers are also opening up.
Right. So, sir, some people have also asked us prior to this interview is how they can get a job at Siemens, like a proper a software job at Siemens. What would your advice be to those people, or some tips that you would like to share to those people who are applying for jobs at your company?
Okay. Two aspects. We do hire a lot of people. Today, I think we have close to 500 plus open positions at Siemens Technologies. Right. And for a variety of jobs, from a programmer to architects, different technologies, different domains. And we have openings right from a fresher because we have last year, because of the way campuses were, nobody went anywhere. We are recruiting, I think, about 40 to 45 freshers in the next 1 or 2 weeks. And we are going to be using Hacker Earth to set up a problem. So people who solve the problem will get an interview call from us. As always, Siemens.com/careers is the place to go to look out of various jobs that are currently there. So we do have a lot of openings, especially in the tech segment across the country: Bangalore, Pune, Noida, Chennai, these being the 4 important places where we are hiring. Ultimately, I think it's a question of your skill set and your interest in a job out here for Siemens. We are a product company. We are not a services company. So we work on deep technology products that make a huge amount of impact. Our product life cycles are large, 18 months to 24 months on a particular project. So you need someone who has the ability to get deep into it, work on for a longer period of time to deliver a particular project or a product. And a lot of it is with industry in mind. Siemens does not work for an end consumer. It only works on B2B or B2E. So in the sense that we are not into consumer products, we are into large scale things that impact economies. So the scale is large and you need to have a mindset to work there. But a great welcome to anyone who wants a career at Siemens. We have multiple openings across the country at this point. We are working remote. So wherever you are, you can apply.
Right. Thanks for sharing that, sir. And this is for everyone who's watching this. I hope you've taken down notes about what sir has said, and this will definitely help you in your application at Siemens and generally in your career going forward. So, sir, we are now going to take some live questions from the audience since this is a live session. I'm just going to see if we have any questions here. Right. Any questions, guys? Okay, so there is one question here that says, when it comes to a job description, right? When an HR shares a JD with you, it is often seen that what is mentioned in it does not necessarily make that amount of sense. For example, a fresher who has received a JD that says that he should have some kind of a background in social media marketing or digital marketing or SEO, SEM and whatnot. But ultimately, he's a fresher. You wouldn't expect him to have that kind of knowledge. So do you think JD should be tweaked in a manner based on the candidate that you are looking out for, and should be thoroughly checked before sending it out to them?
Okay. 2 aspects. So when you look at a JD, from an organization perspective, it's a JD for a particular role in a particular, let's say, internal bands or levels that the organization has. So an entry level role will have 0 to maybe 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, depending on the organization. So it is tuned for a 0 to 4. So there are certain elements like, for example, experience, which will be more relevant to somebody who is already 2 to 3 years of experience, for example. In such cases, what we are also looking at is non-work related experience on social media. For example, if you run a social media campaign for a cultural fest in your college, right? That comes in useful, because what we are looking for is when people apply to a role, right? You are able to showcase certain skill sets which are a match to the role. A lot of times people send out a resume which is not tailor made, right? So couple of tips that I have when it comes to sending out a resume for a role. These JDs are broad, so they're not very, very specific. But when they say 0 to 3 years of experience, for a person who is 0, they're only looking at an interest in that area and the trainability of the person. For somebody who's 3 years, they're looking at someone who has already experienced. So we can't tweak the JD to a large extent. But what you can do is, when you're applying for a role like that, tweak your resume so that it matches the JD. Talk about things which are in the JD which you have. Talk about your interest in the area. Talk about how, without experience, you still have, for example, done a course on digital marketing from an academy. So you can say, I've done a course. I don't have the experience, but I'm proving my interest in that area because I've done a course, right? So that is, again, very relevant. So look at the JD and then tweak your resume accordingly. Don't have one standard resume that you sent out. And please don't send out resumes which says, dear sir / madam. Right? I mean, it means that it's a generic resume that's going out. So if you have a hiring manager in that, use the data, right? So that you're writing to that person, right? And normally it says, send your resume to, let us say, aditya.shukla at so and so, or Rishabh, right? So when I write, I say, dear Rishabh, right? That makes more sense instead of saying dear sir, right? So yes, resumes, the JDs are not always tweaked because they have a band within the organization. Yeah. But within that, when you are applying, depending upon whether you are a fresher or experienced, highlight the things in the JD that you have or you have shown an interest.
Right. Ultimately, you need to show your willingness to learn, right?
Absolutely. You need to show that you are willing to learn. Yes.
Right. And we have one more question here, sir, that says, do you think the recovery period in terms of hiring has started, considering that, for quite some time jobs were frozen? But now, do you think over time things have improved and in the near future they will continue to improve?
The tech industry hiring is extremely started, and it is very, very hot right now. There are actually more jobs going than there are people in the market. So tech industry definitely has seen the recovery. Non-tech roles, because of restrictions, where companies are working only 50%. Like, for example, in Karnataka, industries are able to work only 50% of the time, right? So in such a case where you have a supply chain problem, a logistical issue, you don't have enough raw materials, and factories are working off strength. So in such industries, definitely brick and mortar kind of roles, industry oriented roles, there is a kind of a freeze in the market at this point. But when it comes to IT roles, technology roles, domain skills, at this point, I don't think there is a freeze at all. In fact, most organizations are hiring tremendously at this point from an IT sector.
Right. So that's good news for you, whoever has asked this question. That's wonderful. So, sir, that's about it, I guess, for the live questions as well. We're almost at the end of this session. Before I let you go, I'd definitely like you to share some advice, for those people who are looking to make HR their career option in the future.
Okay. See, tech jobs in HR are also going through a huge transformation. HR is also going through a huge transformation with AI, ML usage coming in, usage of data, and how to analyze the data and help the organization further. So one of the things that my advice to people who are coming into HR and want a role in HR, is learn technology that impacts HR, not just trying to work on Excel, but learn technology in terms of AI, ML, data analytics, because that is going to be a very big thing from a HR perspective. The second advice for people who are getting into HR in terms of the technology trends that are coming into HR is also, work on the interrelation of the various aspects of HR and the way that you need to work with business in order to serve business. This is pretty important because learning the business is very, very important to do HR partnering. So don't think of HR only as a support function. Think of it as a partnering function. Learn the domain, learn the technology of the organization where the organization is going to, and then tweak your approaches on how you want to look at HR. These are the two advices that I would have. Learn technology, learn the business.
Right, absolutely. Thank you so much, sir, for sharing that advice. And I'm sure that will help a lot of people. And ultimately, HR should not just be looked at as a support function, but definitely much more than that, right?
Absolutely, Rishabh.
Yes, sir. So, sir, thank you so much for joining us here today on Meet the HR. I understand that it's a Sunday, but you have given us your valuable time, and we really appreciate that. And it was a pleasure talking to you and listening to your words of wisdom and the knowledge you had to impart for all our student community and some of the engineers and professionals here today. So, thank you so much once again for being here. Any last thoughts, sir?
Rishabh, thanks a lot for inviting me. It's been a pleasure talking to you and to the larger community out there who are on this call. Stay safe, be vaccinated, take care of your loved ones, connect with people, meet with people, because although it is completely virtual at this point in time, make it a point to connect and talk to people. And that's the only way all of us are going to get through this pandemic at this point in time. So the wish is everyone stays safe at this point.
Yes, absolutely. So we resonate that message as well here at an academy. Everyone, please stay safe, stay at home. And if you need to step out, please do wear a mask and get vaccinated as soon as possible. We will be back soon with yet another episode of Meet the HR. We will see you soon. Thank you so much for tuning in.